Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak directly to the American people tonight about how we can end this shutdown and meet the needs of the American people. Sadly, much of what we heard from President Trump throughout this senseless shutdown has been full of misinformation and even malice. The president has chosen fear. We want to start with the facts. The fact is, on the very first day of this Congress, House Democrats passed Senate Republican legislation to reopen government and fund smart, effective border security solutions. But the president is rejecting these bipartisan bills which would reopen government over his obsession with forcing American taxpayers to waste billions of dollars on an expensive and ineffective wall, a wall he always promised Mexico would pay for. The fact is, President Trump has chosen to hold hostage critical services for the health, safety, and well-being of the American people and withhold the paychecks of 800,000 innocent workers across the nation, many of them veterans. He promised to keep government shut down for months or years, no matter whom it hurts. That's just plain wrong. The fact is, we all agree we need to secure our borders while honoring our values. We can build the infrastructure and roads at our ports of entry. We can install new technology to scan cars and trucks for drugs coming into our nation. We can hire the personnel we need to facilitate trade and immigration at the border. We can fund more innovation to detect unauthorized crossings. The fact is, the women and children at the border are not a security threat. They are a humanitarian challenge, a challenge that President Trump's own cruel and counterproductive policies have only deepened. And the fact is, President Trump must stop holding the American people hostage, must stop manufacturing a crisis, and must reopen the government. Thank you. Leader Schumer?
Thank you, Speaker Pelosi. My fellow Americans, we address you tonight for one reason only. The President of the United States, having failed to get Mexico to pay for his ineffective, unnecessary border wall, and unable to convince the Congress or the American people to foot the bill, has shut down the government. American democracy doesn't work that way. We don't govern by temper tantrum. No president should pound the table and demand he gets his way, or else the government shuts down, hurting millions of Americans who are treated as leverage. Tonight, and throughout this debate and throughout his presidency, President Trump has appealed to fear, not facts, division, not unity. Make no mistake, Democrats and the president both want stronger border security. However, we sharply disagree with the president about the most effective way to do it. So, how do we untangle this mess? Well, there's an obvious solution. Separate the shutdown from arguments over border security. There is bipartisan legislation supported by Democrats and Republicans to reopen government while allowing debate over border security to continue. There is no excuse for hurting millions of Americans over a policy difference. Federal workers are about to miss a paycheck. Some families can't get a mortgage to buy a new home. Farmers and small businesses won't get loans they desperately need. Most presidents have used Oval Office addresses for noble purposes. This president just used the backdrop of the Oval Office to manufacture a crisis, stoke fear, and divert attention from the turmoil in his administration. My fellow Americans, there is no challenge so great that our nation cannot rise to meet it. We can reopen the government and continue to work through disagreements over policy. We can secure our border without an ineffective, expensive wall. And we can welcome legal immigrants and refugees without compromising safety and security. The symbol of America should be the Statue of Liberty, not a 30-foot wall.
A century ago, in the shadow of the Statue of Liberty, one of the world's great public hospitals was built. The hospital was America's first line of defense against contagious disease. It was here that the germs of the world converged. Malaria and typhus from the tropics, cholera from the Mediterranean, hookworm from the rice paddies of Canton, Favis and trachoma from Central and Eastern Europe. The Ellis Island Hospital was massive. 22 buildings crammed onto 2 small islands, man-made from rock and dirt excavated while building New York's subway system. Between 1880 and 1924, nearly 25 million immigrants left their homelands for America. Half came through Ellis Island. Most were from northern, southern, and eastern Europe. In much smaller numbers, they came from China, Canada, and Mexico. Of the 12 million who came through Ellis Island, tens of thousands of immigrants failed the mandatory and were detained at the hospital. Then the psychopathic hospital, with its 50 beds and isolation rooms, was constructed. Last built were the wards of the 450-bed Contagious Disease Hospital, which sprawled across 2 of the islands and was the complex's flagship. One observer said that the Ellis Island Hospital dealt with every sort of disorder, ranging from slight injury to obscure tropical disease. It's at once a maternity home and an insane asylum. The hospital could be an overwhelming place. The language, the food, the customs, and even the care were strange to many of the immigrant patients. The immigrants to Ellis Island brought their hopes, but many also carried dangerous diseases. In the era before antibiotics, contagious diseases like cholera, diphtheria, typhus, tuberculosis, and polio could be fatal. In 1907, panic and death spread through the boroughs of New York City when Mary Mallon, an immigrant kitchen worker, infected dozens of people.
So our suggestion is a simple one. Mr. President, reopen the government and we can work to resolve our differences over border security, but end this shutdown now. Thank you.
The amendment would reduce both illegal entry into the country and the number of people who stay in the country beyond their end of their authorized period. I say that to my colleague from Texas who's on the floor and others who say, this won't work. CBO, illegal immigration, will decline as a result of the Corker-Hoven Amendment. And here's something else CBO says. All told, CBO and JCT, Joint Tax Committee, Joint Committee on Tax, expect that enacting the amendment would, like enacting S-744, the base bill, reduce the federal deficit over the next 10 years and the second decade following enactment. Fewer illegal immigrants, higher GDP, more jobs, reduced deficit. Who could oppose that? I don't know of anybody, Madam President, if they care about America. And so once again on the border stuff, my colleagues just won't take yes for an answer. This is the toughest, strongest, most expensive border provision that we have had. It is augmented, of course, by the exit-entry system improvements and the mandatory E-Verify, which many of my colleagues, including my good friend from Alabama, has been calling for a long time. Illegal immigration will drop dramatically. GDP will go up, jobs will go up, and the deficit will go down. Pass this amendment and pass this bill. It's good for America. I yield the floor.